Today's inspiring mind is Robert Schwartz. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and honor to be here.
Yes, you're a very inspiring mind after looking at a lot of the videos and researching your books and the information that you're able to give to the universe and to the public who have a knack for this type of knowledge. Maybe you can share some of your inspiring information and inspiring wisdom.
Well, I am an American hypnotist and the author of two books. One is called Your Soul's Plan, Discovering the Real Meaning of the Life You Planned Before You Were Born. And the second book is Your Soul's Gift, The Healing Power of the Life You Planned Before You Were Born. And what I did in the two books is that I interviewed people about very common life challenges. And it's all the most common things we face here on Earth, difficult relationships, physical illness, mental illness, financial challenges, pretty much anything you can think of.
Right.
And the person I interviewed had 1, 2, or sometimes 3 sessions with some very gifted mediums and channels who could find out if the person planned the challenge before they were born, and if so, why. And then in the books, I present all the information that came through. So the intentions of the work are to help people awaken, by which I mean come into some awareness that you are more than your body, more than your personality, that you're in fact an eternal soul. A second intention is to help people heal from their biggest challenges. And the third intention is to help them see the deeper spiritual meaning and purpose of their biggest challenges, which is a large part of the healing. Right. So if any of your audience is interested, if they go to yoursoulsplan.com, they can read parts of the books there for free. I'm also a hypnotist. I practice something called a between lives soul regression, which is a form of hypnosis in which the client goes into a trance state, talks to non-physical beings on the other side who know what their life plan is. And so those beings can tell them what they planned, why they made those plans, how they're doing in terms of fulfilling the plan, and how they can better fulfill the plan.
Yeah, very interesting. So let's start off with, how did you basically get into this work? What did you do before?
Well, until the age of 40, I was actually in the corporate sector doing marketing communications on a freelance basis. I found that work to be very, very unfulfilling. Right. And I knew that there was something else I was supposed to be doing with my life. I did not know what it was. And so I tried various conventional routes to figure out what I should be doing. I went for career counseling, talked to friends and family. None of that really helped at all. And so on May 7 of 2003, I did something that I had never done before. Almost out of desperation, I went to see a psychic medium. Now, I come from a very conventional background. I wasn't even sure if I believed in mediumship at that time. But I thought, why not? I'll invest an hour of my time and a little money. If nothing comes out of it, there's no harm done. So I go into this session with the medium, and she starts off by introducing me to the concept of spirit guides, which I had never even heard of at that time. Right. Explains that a guide is a highly evolved non-physical being with whom we plan our lives before birth and who then guides us after we come into body. Then she starts to channel my guides, and they say to me, you planned your life, including your biggest challenges, before you were born. Well, I just shook my head and I said, why in the world would I have done that? Right. That you did this for purposes of spiritual growth. Now, what made it really compelling is that they knew what all of my challenges had been without me telling them anything about myself. And they launched into this very detailed explanation of why I had planned those difficult experiences. So I came out of that session with my world being completely rocked. I mean, it just blew my mind. And I thought about this constantly for a few weeks. And the effect that it had on me was that it created a deep healing, because it allowed me to see a deeper meaning to challenges that previously had seemed not to have any meaning. And at that point, I realized I was onto a concept that could bring a similar kind of healing to other people. I left the corporate world, spent the next 3 years writing Your Soul's Plan. Then after that, wrote Your Soul's Gift. Then started the practice of between lives soul regressions. And so now I have a completely different life. it's much more fulfilling, and I feel like I'm actually making a difference in the world.
Yeah, very interesting. So if we look at the process of birth and death, um, at the time of our death, based upon your knowledge and your insight, what exactly happens?
There's a life review, and as I understand it, the life review is conducted with your guides. You are shown scenes from the lifetime, the incarnation. It's done in an environment of complete unconditional love and total non-judgment. So your guides do not pass judgment on you in any way, but you are likely to judge yourself when you see these scenes. So, as I understand it, there's a common misconception that the life review is like a movie that starts at the beginning of your life and ends at the end of the lifetime. That is not my understanding of how the life review works. It's done according to themes. So, for example, let's say you planned before you were born to work on becoming more compassionate. Compassion is one of the themes of your incarnation. Your guides will show you scenes related to compassion, and the scenes will be in order of vibration or frequency.
Right.
The first scene may be something where you demonstrated no compassion at all. And then you're shown a scene where you showed a little compassion, another scene where you showed a little more, and you keep working your way up until you get to the scene where you showed as much compassion as is possible for you in that lifetime. So they're charting the development of compassion over the course of the incarnation. And then at the end of the life review, you can say, all right, I'm happy with what I did in terms of developing compassion. Let's go on to something else. Or I'm not so happy with what I did. I'd like to work on compassion in another lifetime.
Do they bring up the prior lives before the one that the person had lived in? In other words, to almost use it as a base to see if they've made improvements?
That is a question that I have not researched, so I actually don't know the answer.
Right.
My educated guess would be that if you ask them to do that, they would have the ability to do that.
And the people who offer this review are the people in a soul group, or are they the specific elders? Does everybody have a specific type of people that they come under in order to get questioned or to be reviewed?
The life review, as I understand it, is conducted with your spirit guides, but as I understand it, everybody has what is referred to as a council of elders. These are beings who are more highly evolved than the guides, and they are charting your development, your evolution over the course of many lifetimes. And those are the beings who my clients talk to in a between life soul regression. They go in front of their council of elders and they talk with the elders about their evolution over the course of many lifetimes. The elders know literally everything about them. And so people come out of those sessions and they say things like, they answered literally every question I asked about my lifetime. I have no more questions about my life. So it's potentially a transformative experience depending upon what you do with it.
Okay, so after the review is done, what's the next step that takes place, if there is one?
Well, then you would decide, do you want to have another incarnation on Earth, or are you going to incarnate on another planet, or will you have a non-physical lifetime somewhere? The choices are literally infinite, or you could just rest for a while on the other side. It's really entirely up to you. Nobody is forced to do anything.
So the decision is not made at the time of the life review. It could be ongoing and it could be changed.
Yeah, you could just decide that you want to rest. Maybe you had a difficult incarnation on Earth. You're not ready for another incarnation or a non-physical lifetime, and so you just decide you're going to rest for a while. Take some classes. There are many classes to take on the other side. Maybe do some teaching if you have an expertise in a certain area. The options are infinite.
Interesting. So let's say, for example, a person does reincarnate, or they're in the process of doing such. Do they carry the traits of the personality with their soul back into the earthly plane, or are they separate from one another? Do they lose all the personality traits, or they're like rays of information that would be passed on?
My understanding is that souls have archetypes. In other words, there's an eternal quality to every soul. Some of the common archetypes are priest, king, warrior, and so on. So you have certain core qualities that are part of your archetype, and those go with you from lifetime to lifetime. But within each incarnation, uh, the the personality is completely different. So there's a layer of personality wrapped around the eternal core that depends upon genes in the lifetime, conditioning in the lifetime. So from lifetime to lifetime on the surface,
Yeah.
you have a completely different personality, even though the core is the same.
What about the physical characteristics? Are there any traces of physical characteristics from the life from each life that we take with us? I've heard instances where people who had been killed in battle had a specific war scar or a cut, and they have remnants of like that on their in the reincarnated body.
Yeah, that does happen. If, for example, you were, let's say, beheaded in a past life, you might have some kind of scar on your neck. That kind of thing does happen frequently.
Okay. So for example, if we're here on this plane to grow as a soul, so I would think that I don't we'd be pushed would be are we not we're not forced to return, but if the mission is to have evolve our soul's growth, then we would be, shown again, I guess, what we need to redo in that review and work on those specific challenges. And I bring this up specifically, if that's the case, are the challenges, do they become more difficult or do they become easier for the person to override or grow from?
The challenges will actually become more difficult within a lifetime if you're not getting the lesson. And this is something that I see again and again in the work that I do.
Right, right, right.
Start off with a relatively easy form of a lesson. And if they get it, then they go on to something else. But if they don't, it comes back a little more intense. And if they don't get it, it comes back a little more intense. A lot of the people that I interviewed for my books who had experienced very difficult challenges, it was interesting. They used the same phrase. They said, the universe hit me over the head with a cosmic 2x4,
Wow.
referring to if they didn't get the lesson the first few times around, then the 2x4 came out, so to speak. Now, I don't want people to go into fear about that. That's actually exactly the opposite of what I want. But just be aware that this is how it works.
Very interesting. Another concept that I was thinking about, I don't know if you have the answer for this, but when a soul, when we have when we have a parent or an ancestor that has like been very special to us, they pass on, and we always hear the term possibly they're watching over us. But if a soul reincarnates into another body, is that soul still watching over a person? Are they still there for their loved ones? Is there a time and place where, let's say, a person channels a person, a grandmother or a grandfather, and they're still in spirit, in the spirit world? They're able to be contacted, but once they reincarnate, are they still in? Are there remnants of their soul still in that place to guide their former?
My understanding is that is the case. And the reason for that is that consciousness is non-local, meaning that you, when you're not in body, you can be in more than one place at the same time.
Wow, that's very interesting. So, in essence, we ourselves, as reincarnated souls, having had past lives, have the ability to be contacted by former loved ones who we were once maybe parents of, grandparents of, or vice versa, if that would be the case.
Yeah, that is my understanding. Yeah.
So, wow. Okay. Yeah, so in terms of reincarnation itself, how long does the process take, and what is the next step of making the decision to come back?
The average person, as I understand it, reincarnates within 25 to 75 years of linear Earth time. Now, on the other side, probably know there is no time at all.
Right.
But to translate it into Earth terms, it's 25 to 75 years. And the next step would be to decide what you want to work on in the next lifetime. And then you go to the other members of your soul group and you say, I'm going to work on X, Y, and Z. Would you play this role or that role? And so it's like you're writing a play that's going to be performed on the Earth stage, so to speak.
If you could just fill in the viewers what a soul group is, as opposed to a soulmate, if it's the same thing or it's not, what the
It's
difference
not the
is.
same thing. A
Okay.
soul group is a collection of souls who are at more or less the same frequency, which is another way of saying more or less the same evolutionary stage. So you and the other members of your soul group have many, many lifetimes together, and you take turns playing every conceivable role for each other. So you will be mother and daughter, father and son, brother and sister, romantic partners, best friends, mortal enemies, teacher and pupil, employer and employee, every conceivable role. And each role is seen by the soul as a learning opportunity.
Okay, so for example, when we're in the role of a son to parents, we could have once been the parents to our parents.
Yeah, and that is very common actually.
Okay, so in terms of our evolution, are there specific are there a list of life challenges or soul purposes that we go through in terms of, or there are a group of purposes that each person has? In other words, do they work on one issue? Do they work on multiple issues while they're in this life?
In the work that I've done in the research for the two books, what I found is that a lot of the pre-birth planning at the soul level revolves around a soul's desire to cultivate and then express while embody certain qualities that are important to the soul. And I refer to these qualities as divine virtues. It's things like compassion, empathy, patience, self-love, unconditional love, and so forth. Over a period of years, I put together a list of the ones that came up the most often. I think there are now 28 on the list. The average person is working on 2 or 3 of the virtues in a lifetime. Occasionally, and it's pretty rare, somebody is working on 4 or 5. I have never seen anybody working on more than 5. So again, most people are working on 2 and 3, and you plan your life so that you'll have multiple opportunities to cultivate and express those 2 or 3 virtues.
Hmm. Is there like a specific time in a person's life when they will be struck with the fact that, oh, something is not going on the way I thought it would, and like a particular incident will take place that will awaken a person's soul to guide them on their life purpose, or reiterate the message or the goal that they had coming here?
People do plan for certain events or relationships to help them awaken to their learning, to their purposes. But it can be at any time of the life. There's no particular point in the life where it tends to happen. It can be at any age, really.
Are we reminded of past lives in a life itself in order to enhance that message, or I guess you just answered
Well,
that.
that's actually something that happens in a between lives soul regression. When I work with a client and we do that kind of session, it starts off with a past life regression. And it's almost always a past life that had a big impact on the plan for the current lifetime. So people will see several scenes in the past life. And then the last scene they're shown is the death scene. They leave the body in the death scene, they cross back over to the other side. When they get there, most people are greeted by one of their guides. They'll talk to the guide briefly about why they were shown that past life and how it's relevant to the current lifetime. And then the guide takes them to the Council of Elders where they ask any questions they have about their life plan.
Wow, I could discuss a particular incident that happened in my life. I was probably, it was about probably 10 years ago, and first of all, I had studied in Germany in 1987, and I was there for about 5 months, and I had spoken German fluently with the interest of Germany itself. And then fast forward 30 years later, every time I had seen a vent in a ceiling, I had panicked, and I was developing asthma, either physiologically or just maybe psychologically or both. And then I had an Akashic record, a past life reading done, and it brought me back to Germany into the concentration camps. And to being and I was always interested in medicine and anatomy and all kinds of nutrition. And the reading was is that I was a doctor in one of the camps, a Jewish doctor in the kind. Yeah, and what happened was I had that awakening of recognizing that it was a past life, broke my ego to a place of realizing that I wasn't so critical of myself after realizing that. And with that said, then I had gone to a psychic workshop where they were blowing incense, and one of the girls in the group had said, I asked her if they could shut it down, and she said to me, "It's not from this life; it's from the past life," which confirmed another person saying exactly what I experienced. So I felt from my personal experience that there were things that were trying to awaken me, to guide me, to remember. So I don't know why that memory was sparked or why I was supposed to remember, but it did. And in terms of seeing clients, for example, even my daughter's son, he's 3 years old, and he has this fascination with 1980s music all of a sudden. Every channel is 1980s and all this other stuff. So it's a little bit difficult to discuss with people. The subject itself is difficult for people who have not, whose consciousness is not vibrated at a higher level, so to speak. So how do you pass the message on to people and inform them? Do they come to this on their own, this journey itself?
Well, because the books that I wrote are focused on difficult life challenges, the people who come to me very often are people who have suffered some kind of great challenge or great setback, and they want to understand, why did this happen? What does it mean? How should I respond to it? And that is one of the reasons why people plan big challenges before they were born, because it's intended to trigger a spiritual awakening. But how do you get the message to the average person? I don't think that preaching about it is helpful to convert somebody to our way of thinking. The best thing to do is to take your spiritual growth and your learning, use it to create peace, love, and happiness and joy in your own life. And then people see, oh, he's onto something. What is he doing that brings him so much joy? And some of those people will ask questions, and then you have an opening to talk about how you got there.
On the subject of free will, could you discuss what free will exactly is? Because most people think that we can go in whatever direction we choose. But if you could define that a little bit more.
So the life plan, as I understand it, is set up such that certain parameters are put in place. And within those parameters, you have total free will, but you can't use your free will to go outside those parameters. So for example, let's say that you plan before you're born to be born with a physical handicap that cannot be treated by medical science in the time period in which you're incarnating, which is something you would know before you come into body. Then, short of what we call a miracle, you're going to have that physical handicap for the entire lifetime. You can't use your free will to get rid of the physical handicap. It's something that you planned before you were born. But within the parameters that you yourself set up when you create the life plan, you have total free will. And basically, you use your free will to learn either slowly or quickly, depending upon the kinds of choices you make. If you make loving choices, you learn the lessons much more easily and quickly. If you make unloving choices, it's a more arduous path.
Wow. Are our guides with us on a daily basis to help us reach our goals, our soul purpose? Do they nudge us in a certain direction towards getting there, or finding our place in life?
They know what's going on in our life. I don't think it's the case that they're monitoring us all day long, every day. They have lives of their own, and they have a number of other responsibilities, but they know what's going on. And basically, they sense your vibration. So if you're distressed by something that has happened in your life, they will feel that vibration. And then they come to you and offer you guidance to help you with whatever it is.
Okay. Moving on to the subject of manifestation, on the subject of energy. So in terms of a person's vibration, as you just mentioned, um, in order for us to manifest what we choose to have in the life that we choose, um, you mentioned a combination of having the thought pattern itself, as well as also creating the energy that matches the thought pattern. And in that process, the combination of the two help us create our future. Is that something that you can elaborate on?
It's basically the law of attraction. Your frequency determines what comes into your experience. So the higher your vibration, in other words, the more loving you are, the more you can allow joyful, happy, peaceful, loving things to come into your experience. Uh, it takes a while on the physical plane because thought does not manifest instantly here the way it does on the other side. And that's a built-in protective mechanism so that if you have some negative thoughts, you don't want them to manifest immediately on the physical plane. It's a way that people can learn over time to control their thoughts, control their emotions, so that they can create exactly what they want, rather than unconsciously creating what they do not want.
Yeah, if it's funny because if you look at the world itself now in terms of specifically what's going on with the pandemic, the COVID-19, um, many people who are probably maybe in a false sense of hope are now being tested to actually to develop a less fearful attitude towards things.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I read on your blog, which was very interesting, that you wrote on March 16th, 2020, where you channeled the message of the COVID-19 virus. And if you could just share a little bit about that information, because I found it to be very inspiring.
Yeah, let me tell people where to go so that they can read this for themselves. My
Yes.
website is yoursoulsplan.com. And if you click on About in the main menu, one of the subheadings there is Coronavirus Channeling. That's where the channeling has been posted. I should add that I myself did not channel it. It was channeled for me by somebody I've worked with before. I just posted it up on the website.
Okay. Okay.
Um, the channeled consciousness is a group consciousness, a collective of ascended masters. And what they say through the channel basically is that the earth is moving up in vibration. We're going through an ascension process. And we have moved from the third dimension to the fourth, and we're going to move from the fourth into the fifth. The third dimension is one that's based on fear. The fifth dimension is one that's based on love and unity consciousness. And so the coronavirus is something that, although it's a great challenge in many ways, hopefully it's something that over time we respond to in positive, loving ways, and then it propels us toward unity consciousness.
Is there anything that you want to share on that personally? I mean, the message itself. I mean, I understand that we're all sitting in a state of, many people are actually challenged to deal with their own personal fear, or their own fear that they had prior to this particular incident. And so probably whatever fear that was generated, to the extent of the amount of fear that a person can have, is now being tested by this particular situation. So what is the message, do you think, from spirit
I,
as a group consciousness?
I think there are a couple of messages. One is I think Spirit is encouraging all of us to go within. So we have this time now where many of us have to shelter in place, and we have more free time, some of us, than we're accustomed to having. I think Spirit would like us to use that, at least some of that time, to get quiet, get still, meditate, go within, and really connect with Spirit in ways that many of us have not done on a regular basis. I think also Spirit would like us to reach out to others who are in need. Just call people, FaceTime them or Zoom them or Skype them and check on people and see how they're doing. It's a time to reach out and support others in loving ways. And then I think the other message Spirit would like all of us to get is you're in this together. You know, you are a collective, especially in Western societies like the United States. They're so individualized historically, and everybody is about their own business, just trying to get ahead. And I think Spirit is saying to us, you know, this is not what life is really all about. It's about working together, collaboration, cooperation, caring for each other. You are a collective, not just a bunch of individuals who are all striving to get ahead.
Very, very important, especially in today's situation. I've spoke to other people as well, and the messages of love and community and joining in together and trying to work for a cause of change and unity. There's one thing I didn't mention that I wanted to discuss, which was in terms of our death. Do we choose the death that we will have and the date or the particular situation?
My understanding is that before we're born, we set up several potential exit points. And you would take an exit point under basically one of two circumstances. Either you have completed or learned what you came here to learn, in which case it's time to go home, or the soul concludes that you will not be able to do what you came here to do, in which case the soul is not interested in wasting time or energy. Then it's time to go back to the other side and plan another lifetime. So there are multiple exit points staggered across a lifetime, and that's so that you have the opportunity to go back when you've finished doing what you've done here, or will not be able to do what you came here to do.
Is there a not a definition? Is there a specific scenario of what it looks like in heaven based upon what's channeled?
You mean what heaven is like?
Yeah, well, I guess what heaven is like. Yeah.
There are some good books on this subject. There's a wonderful book called Testimony of Light, written by an English woman named Helen Greaves, who had a friend die, and then the friend started to speak to her from the other side and really describe in considerable detail what it's like. And it's spectacular, as I understand it. It's an atmosphere of complete unconditional love, total non-judgment, total harmony. Everybody loves everybody. The colors are spectacular, much more vibrant than they are here on Earth. Everything is just at a much higher frequency. So it truly is heaven.
So if nobody is forced to go back to Earth, then why wouldn't they stay in a place that they'd find more heavenly than Earth itself?
Well, some people do, but Earth is a very powerful school. This is a place where you can accelerate your evolution. The challenges here are quite intense, much more so than the kinds of challenges we have in the non-physical realm. And so if you are a soul that wants to accelerate your evolution, this is a very effective school for doing that.
So this is the place to get shooken up, so to speak.
You could put it that way. Yeah.
That's interesting. So in other words, it would be more complacent, a complacent energy in out of this dimension itself, coming back in. Do we miss this earthly plane after being in a new environment for us, for our soul?
I think, from what I've heard, talking to souls on their side, we miss aspects of it. So we miss physical touch. Some people miss the sensations of eating food because you don't have to do that on the other side. It isn't necessary. Some people miss things like tobacco or alcohol if they haven't let go of those attachments. So there are aspects of Earth life that we miss.
Okay. You've basically answered all my questions. It was kind of short but sweet. And kind of got the lesson that I needed to get from today. So just want to thank you very much for sharing this time with me and my audience. And you truly are an inspiring mind with really inspiring information. So I just want to thank you very much, Robert, and I appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure to talk with you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too.